Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy. All right, so what you got for us today, Claire?
I've got Kristen Gilbert, aka the Angel of Death. She is our asshole murder and trash for this week. Now, Kristen was an intensive care nurse at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Leeds of Northampton, Massachusetts. She was convicted of murdering 4 patients and attempting to murder 3 others between August 1995 and February 1996 by injecting them with epinephrine, a stimulant that in large doses can trigger a heart attack.
So she's killing people at the VA?
Yep, veterans. This 2-time
They're all...
Nazi.
This son bitch is killing the people that have signed up to defend our country and our freedom, and she's done taking their lives?
She sure does.
I hope she gets the death penalty.
And I wish I could tell you that it was like mercy killings, but she's just a piece of garbage. So
that was going to be my next question. Was she putting people out of their misery because
No.
they were in pain and they were wanting to die? Or was
'Cause
she just going around killing people?
I know we've discussed this in the past, that I understand people who smother or put down something that's suffering.
Run, Dave.
I can understand that putting something out of their misery, like the mercy killings, shall we? But that's the only time that I think it'd be okay. But I also consider it a mercy killing for all those on death row. Put them out of their misery too. But anyway, we're getting off topic. This is about Kristen.
No, this is about all her victims.
I like that. Yes, it's about her victims. Now, Kristen was born on November 13th, 1967 in Fall River, Massachusetts. She's the oldest of 2 daughters born to Richard and Claudia Strickland. Richard was an electronics executive that had left the Coast Guard, and Claudia was a part-time teacher and a homemaker. Now, Kristen would claim her mother would beat her and that both her parents were distant, unaffectionate. It's coming from Kristen, who is a piece of shit that, take it what you will. Now, as a child, she would excel in school, but when she hits her teens, her friends and family would start to notice her habitual lying and say that she was prone to displays of neurotic behavior. She would also have a history of faking suicide attempts to manipulate people, and would even have a court history of making violent threats against other teenagers.
And did they put her in any type of institution or doctors to get her help? Or did they just notice it and do nothing?
They just scratched their heads and went, you think she'll grow out of this? Let's see.
Right.
But that's really all I got about her youth. But although one little lie that she would make up, she would tell people in her school that she was related to the murderer Lizzie Borden, which she is not. I don't know. I think it's a weird thing to even make up, like all the lies you could make up. But I guess maybe the murderer, Lizzie Borden.
Well, technically she was acquitted of her crimes, but you're talking about Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks, and when she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. That Lizzie Borden?
Oh, I have not heard that. That's so fucked up. Why do you know that? Keep that to yourself. But yes,
I've listened to other podcasts out there that have done episodes on her.
I just keep listening to that little rhyme just then. But I don't know. I don't know if she would make that up as like if she's also threatening people. That maybe it's like well, you better take me seriously because I'm related to Lizzie Borden. So there. But nonetheless,
she needs to brush up on her facts then, because Lizzie Borden was found or was acquitted of her crime that she was accused of.
She might not have been acquitted at that point. Do you have dates on your brains there? Or did you just memorize the rhyme?
I memorized bits and pieces, but Lizzie Borden was back in 1892.
Well, then I would venture to say she was acquitted by this point. But, okay, so this smarty pants would graduate her high school a year and a half early and would then enroll into a community college to focus on being pre-med in order to get the start on her nursing career. Now, by 17, this loose Tootsie Roll would begin
Okay.
would begin being abusive to both her boyfriends, like her current boyfriend and her ex-boyfriends, which I feel like that's probably what made them exes. So I don't know if that means she was slapping around everybody, whether they were current or her ex-boyfriends, or if they were just friends having to be boys and she's smacking them around too. But regardless, she's abusive to the people around her.
I do not condone domestic violence or violence of any kind. I think I've made that abundantly clear. But let's just pretend it's the first time you've listened to our episode. I do feel like if a woman is going to hit anyone else, that the anyone else has the right to defend themselves. Now, if you're a woman and you lay hands on a man, I think that man has the right to bitch slap you right on back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He sure done is. But the problem is those men folk that if they hit back and it causes a pretty big thump, and maybe the slappy fit that she did to him to start it doesn't leave a mark, most people don't believe the lady done the hitting first.
That's true.
So perhaps everybody stop with the bitch slapping.
Exactly. I second that. Here, here.
But she was a 17-year-old, not nice lady that happened to be a pretty girl with a bad attitude and a physical thing going on there. But by 1987, she would fake a suicide attempt that would have her ordered to have psychiatric treatment at the same facility where she was practicing doing her practical learning at. So
Ooh, that's
naturally,
embarrassing.
yeah. So naturally, when she gets out of there, she transfers to a different school for a fresh start, and I can understand why you'd want to do that.
Yeah, I do understand that one. I think that her parents should be held slightly accountable because at this point in time, she is a minor. How they've let this girl get along for this long being an abusive little shit and they've done nothing. And I realize kids can get out of control, but
Well, by this point, she's 19.
but you said originally she was
Oh, yeah.
17.
Well, yeah.
So
When she was 17, slapping around her boyfriends. Yeah, that.
yeah, her parents should have stepped up to the plate because guess what, guys? When you've got little rugrats out there, you are responsible for the monsters they become if you
Or,
choose to do nothing.
or how about let's rewind to when she was 16 and had several fake suicide attempts. If that's not a cry for help, I don't know what is. Because even if she's just making it look like she tried to commit suicide without actually trying to commit suicide, and I don't even know what that looks like, but that's also a we need to deal with this, not just do the okay, she's weird and turn your back.
Yeah. If your kid, if they're a minor, it is your responsibility to do something about it. Now, granted, I realize there's kids that grow up and their parents tried to help them when they were minors and then they hit that 18 point and they just are out of control. And at least the parents tried, but to turn your back on them and not try to fix whatever's broken in her brain, shame on them. Does she
Yeah,
kill them? No, she kills
no,
veterans.
she
Okay.
does not.
Yeah. I don't feel bad shaming her parents for letting her be a monster because they are
So,
not her victim. Okay, continue.
or that same year, she takes a job as a home health aide and would use bath water to scald a retarded child. He would end up
What?
with burns over 60% of his body. Now, she's not prosecuted, but she is let go.
Why is she not?
I don't know if maybe it was hawked up to. How do you prove somebody did that deliberately? I don't know that she did, but how the hell do you make the bathwater so hot you scald a child?
I'm sure that kid was screaming bloody murder.
And 60% of his body, so that means he was plunked down right in it. Which uh,
How old was he?
they didn't say, but it just
Oh,
said he was a scalded, retarded child, is all that was in there.
it's an awful way to describe a child, but like mentally handicapped. I'm sure there's more politically correct ways to say that. We all get the gist,
Yeah.
but it's still a screwed up way to say it.
Well, a year later, she marries, and this is 1988, she marries Glenn Gilbert, becoming Kristen Gilbert.
How does she get a job as a home health aide? Because they
So,
do background checks and stuff, and she's crazy and violent. So how is she able to get a
but
job taking care of people? She
no,
was a
no, no,
minor.
no. Yes, yes, yes.
Ugh. All
And
right.
she was never charged with anything. So it's like there's just in and out of like the usual thing we see of nothing comes of it, or parents decide, to let things go, or the school's going to deal with it. Like things around. And I understand when you're dealing with adolescents also that you don't want to permanently ruin someone's life. But I think there are instances where if the shit is serious, it does need to be something taken seriously. But like there's two sides to that, with then they carry that mark for the rest of their life, you know
Yeah.
and sometimes it's just angry stupid teenagers that are chock full of hormones. This
They
one
should
was
just,
just a bad one.
yeah. All right. Carry on. Sorry for interrupting. I was just curious because I know they do background checks for that stuff.
Yeah. Now around this time, or like that time when she was scalding the poor boy, that
Mhm.
she meets Glenn Gilbert, and about after a year they end up eloping, and she becomes Kristen Gilbert. Now later that year, no, I mean, within still being newlyweds, her and poor Glenn get into an argument, and she chases him around the house with a butcher's knife.
Good Lord. See, he would, in my book, have the right to knock her ass out and go get some help.
I would say if she's armed with a butcher's knife, stay away from arm's length. He could have been stabbed, but I don't know
I'd
what
throw
they were.
something.
I have no idea what they were arguing about, but it was pretty serious, evidently.
I wonder if he just left the dirty dishes in the sink.
Probably. You see this knife? It's got water spots. Let me show it to you.
Come closer. And he ran. And she's like, why are you running? Chasing him around.
Yeah.
Don't leave the dishes in the sink, feller.
But also
Sorry.
in that year, mind you, she's 21 at this point, she gains her certification as a registered nurse from Glenfield Community College.
So
Now,
nothing
all
came of her chasing him around with a knife?
sure didn't. That only comes out after she goes to court. It's like I mean, naturally, when people are arrested and then all the things start to bubble up, that it's like, oh, yeah. Turns out if everybody would have pulled their grievances early on, might have had a handle on this Looney Tune. But nevertheless, she graduates, ends up getting a job at the Veterans Hospital in Northampton, Massachusetts, where our victims will be. Now, she does excel at her job initially. She's even featured in the VA Practitioner magazine in April 1990.
Wow.
Yes. Now, despite her thriving career, her coworkers would begin noticing an oddly high number of deaths on her watch. No one suspected anything, but they would jokingly call her the angel of death.
Um,
Now, right? I imagine whoever coined that one's probably like, oops.
um,
Yeah. Now, she gives birth to her first son, Brian, in 1991. The following year, she claims to have received a bomb threat at work. Now, the police obviously will check out bomb threats. They do find a weird box, but it just ends up being coincidental. Turns out to be nothing. The hospital is basically it's emptied out for hours while they're trying to run down whether this bomb threat is legitimate. It's not. Nothing comes of it. Now, a year after that, Kristen gives birth to her second son, Raymond, in 1993. Now, not even a year after Raymond's born, Kristen and Glenn's marriage starts to fall apart. Might not have started off too great with the whole knife chasing incident,
you
but
think?
she starts diddling the hospital security guard. And also that same year, when their marriage is on the rocks and she's diddling the security guard, she causes a medical emergency by removing a patient's breathing tube. Now, I would assume, since it doesn't say the patient died, that it just caused an emergency and then they were able to stabilize the patient.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm guessing she didn't realize that all those alarms and stuff were going to go beep, beep, beep the second that man couldn't breathe.
Either that or it was just a test to see their relay time. Now, in 1995, when she's now 27, a patient will die under her watch, Stanley Jagdowski. She will eventually be charged with his death. Now, a few months later, her boyfriend, he rents an apartment near her house so he can be closer to her. And then she moves in with him a month later. So
What
once
does
he
her
gets,
husband think?
probably that she's a dirty two-timing hussy.
Or is
But
he like ready for this crazy wench to be gone because she's at home abusing him and he's got to take care of those poor little kids? And if her
probably,
crazy ass is out of the house, the kids are safer for it.
because I'll tell you that there was not a whole lot about her children, so it sounds like she just squirted them out and then left them for poor Glenn to tend to.
They're
But
they're lucky.
yeah, she could have smothered them. Like,
Or she could have rubbed her crazy off onto them and then had two more little monsters out there.
yeah. Now she moves in with her boyfriend, and then in that same month, another patient dies, Henry Houdon. Now that same or that a month after Henry dies, she files for divorce from Glenn.
So if these men, because you said in the beginning that they were healthy, well, how was the hospital explaining away these healthy men? I mean,
Heart
obviously
attacks, just an uptick in
there's
heart attacks.
that's it. That was
She
their
even tries to kill one by giving him epinephrine and insulin, but he ends up surviving.
oh gosh, that poor man.
Yeah. She files for divorce from Glenn, and then later,
Yeah.
somewhere at the end of 1995, early 1996, Kristen would force an untrained colleague to use a defibrillator on a patient during a medical emergency. Now, fortunately, the patient doesn't die, but this is reported to the hospital.
Why did she refuse?
I don't know, because she's a fucking asshole.
So did she like cause
I don't know
the
about that one. If
heart? No.
she probably did. She's
Well,
just
let's just
waltzing
say
around with epinephrine in one pocket and a defibrillator in the other hand, just in case.
well, when the defibrillator bring them back?
Now, another patient dies 2 months later. So we're now in February, and the patient was Kenny Cutting. Not all her colleagues would think it was funny, her having the nickname the Angel of Death. And by 1996, 3 nurses, John Wall, Kathy Ricks, and Renee Walsh, would raise concerns about the number of cardiac deaths under her watch. They also reported that the supply of epinephrine, a drug that mimics the effect of adrenaline and causes a heart attack in excessive quantities, was severely depleted.
She should have at least put like water or
Water.
saline or something back in the containers.
So I don't know
Not
how
saying the
it
better way
is.
to be a criminal, but
So I don't know how it is in all hospitals, but I know like some of the epinephrine things are in like a glass amputube thing where you have to crack in order to open it. So there would be no way to refill it. You got to actually
oh,
break the top of it to get it. It's not like a vial you draw from.
gotcha.
But
I'm not a
again, I
doctor, so
don't
I
I don't know
didn't.
how they all are. That could be different, but I would imagine if you could refill it, it would have been a thing to do.
Well, it would have been less suspicious, and she probably would have been the result of killing more people because when they needed it, and it was really just saline, it would not have worked on the patients.
Yeah, could would have killed even more.
Exactly.
Now, after the hospital administrators think that, yeah, they need to look into what's going on because the shortage of epinephrine is a problem. And then if there's people thinking that patients are dying wrongly, they need to look into that. Mind you, investigations don't happen too quickly because this is in 96, right? But during
Mhm.
that process, another patient dies, Edward Squira. It's Skwira. So, however you want to pronounce that, I apologize to dear Edward because I butchered his name.
Is he alive?
No, he died.
Okay, then you apologize to his family.
I also apologize to Edward because it's his name.
He don't know.
Anyway, Kristen makes a phone call to her boyfriend and she tells him what she's done. He follows up
What?
by getting a restraining order. Like, apparently, on that phone call, I guess she admits to killing a patient, or maybe she tries to turn it into she was nicely trying to kill him. But whatever transpired in that phone call, her boyfriend gets a restraining order against her.
No. I'm going to say it was not like an attack of conscience. She was done threatening him and was like, "You
I
left
think
them
so.
dishes in the sink like my husband did. I'm going to get you when I get home. I done killed this man." and you know what's coming. And he's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to get me a restraining order against this crazy broad.
Now, mind you, he also knows they're investigating in the hospital. And then
Why is she
Glenn.
still working?
So it's such a. I don't know. I think they're just investigating, but they don't have any proof of what's been transpiring at this point. So I think they're just laying in wait to see if they can catch her. But Glenn gets a sniff of this investigation and asks investigators to come to his home and search his pantry that belonged to Kristen, which I thought was like super weird, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
because could you come look in this pantry? This is hers. They find a book in there, and or that's titled "The Handbook of Poisoning," which I was like, "What?" I get having research materials because got me some of them's, but why would the handbook for poisoning be in the pantry and her soon-to-be ex-husband is the one who's just like, you might want to come look here? So I really don't feel like this is evidence we could use because it sounds like it's a setup.
Yeah, that sounds awfully suspicious.
That's what I'm saying. Now, a year later, now August 1996, Kristen is temporarily placed in a psychiatric ward for the third time that month. I don't know what happened the previous two, but she's apparently a bit cracked up top. But the third time she'd be sent to the psychiatric ward. When she gets out, she goes over to Glenn's house and tries to attack him with a set of car keys. Now, I don't know if they were his, hers. She found them in the shrubbery, but she tries to attack that man with a set of keys.
Jason's ex attacked him with a set of keys, swinging him at his face, and scratched his cornea.
Dang, he got off
Mm,
scot free then.
carry on.
Could have lost an eyeball. He could have been a
Sure
Patch
could have.
Adams. Anyways, so before they could get into the throes of that investigation, which I rolled at because this is a year later, at what point do you get into the throes of the investigation in an entire year?
Did she cause any damage to him with the car keys?
Didn't appear so.
All right.
But so they're trying to get into their investigation when another bomb threat is apparently called into the hospital, later determined to have been by Kristen. Now, despite that attempt to thwart the investigation of the murder charges, hospital administrators and police proceed with the investigation. Now, she's sent back to the medical center for a short bit and released and then arrested for the false bomb threat. Now, at that point, they're also exhuming the bodies of patients to test them to see if they were poisoned with epinephrine, which they do eventually test positive for, which having like lethal doses of epinephrine in their system. And Kristen will be charged for murder. Now, in 1998, the trial starts for that bomb threat, and she's sentenced to 15 months at Danbury Federal Prison and treated for psychiatric problems. They don't specify what she's treated for, but she has some psychiatric issues.
Say she does, and I'd say she's had them for quite some time, starting at childhood.
Now, while she's serving that sentence, she waits for her murder trial to start because since once those exhumed bodies started testing positive, and that's what gives them their evidence.
So I mentally picture her. I have no idea what this lady looks like, but I
She
picture her
she's
with
not
her hair
fugly.
all. I picture her with her hair all crazy like, and she's got her eyeballs open real wide and like a crazy, creepy clown smile. And she's just got like some jitters, like she's had too much caffeine, and she's just like, I'm not crazy.
Give me them keys.
Or that knife. Either one works.
And
Anyway,
Kristen was charged with killing 3 patients: Henry Hutton, 30, he was 35, Keith Cutting, 41, and Edward, I don't want to butcher his name again, was 69. Now, she's also charged with attempting to kill 2 other patients, all with lethal doses of epinephrine. Now, a fourth murder was later added on, Stanley Jagdowski. He was 66, which I think is super sad because not
yeah,
saying the ones in their 60s were closer to death anyway, but 35, 41, 69, and 66, their families were robbed.
they really were. Shame on her. And they fought for our country.
Yes, that we're talking she killed veterans, that she's a piece of shit.
They, assuming, especially the 60-year-olds, went to Vietnam and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, shame on her. Does she get the death penalty?
So Kristen was found to have injected her victims with epinephrine, which caused their hearts to beat out of control, mimicking a heart attack. Autopsies, like I said, would confirm that they all received a lethal dose of the drug. Now, it has not been determined what her motive was to kill her patients, though some would speculate that it was to gain attention to herself and her clinical abilities, to how she reacted in emergencies. Basically, by creating emergencies and then responding to them, being all amazing, is what she was trying to artificially uh, inspire.
Simulate,
Yeah.
yeah.
Specifically to impress her boyfriend there, the security guard, James Perrault.
Turns out not killing people and controlling her crazy would impress him plenty. Menfolk aren't that hard to please.
Now, the reason why this is interesting is because he was that VA hospital police officer, right? That she was
Mm-hmm.
diddling. Now, according to VA hospital rules, it's required that hospital police are present during medical emergencies. So he would have a front row seat to when there was a cardiac issue or anything, any medical emergency, he'd be there. So he'd get to watch her in all her glory, which is why I think sometimes her patients lived, because then she was amazing and tried. So I don't know if she was necessarily trying to kill them as much as she was trying to create emergencies to be the hero. Because obviously, if you cause something, then you know how to fix it. And if you're there, the hero every time, it's like
Right.
she's definitely got a complex there. Now, James would testify that she had admitted to murdering a patient when she was on the phone with him. But since there's no evidence, it's kind of one of those.
He said, she said, yeah.
And when it's after the fact, just like her ex husband supposedly finding that poisoning book in the pantry after she had moved out. That too, it's one of those. But there were many medical emergencies when Kristen was on duty. Now, most of her patients would survive, but of the 63 emergencies
Holy
investigated,
shit.
now of the 63 emergencies investigated, 37 patients died while Kristen was in attendance, and administrators believe that she could possibly be responsible for over 80 deaths. Now, some reports would say over 300 because she worked there for several years. So, if you just go with cardiac emergencies, then it was just like it was an extremely high number on her watch. And then also, when you factor in that she was injecting too much insulin in some people, and now, mind you, some people would survive. So, it's just like, how do you know which one was legitimate?
None. I'm going to
But
say none. I'm going to say her nursing skills were complete shit, just like her personality and her temperament. And she created her emergencies. Like, what kind of VA hospital is this? I thought these were fairly healthy men. I realize they're in the hospital, so they're there for one reason or another. But good Lord, how many people are dropping of heart attacks and stuff that it didn't raise alarm beforehand? And why on God's green earth did they let her continue working once they
so
were onto her?
So I feel like since they were investigating, they had to have some sort of proof. And since they were only going off of this like feelings, and now mind you, it was 3 staff members, but you figure you could still sue for wrongful termination.
It's called a suspension while investigating.
But what evidence?
63 emergencies.
Well, they stopped at 300 medical emergencies that they think that she probably had a hand in.
Did the hospital get sued?
Not that I know of.
I feel like
Now,
that hospital should have been sued, not to jump on the more modern version of society and suing everybody for every little thing, but they kept her butt there after they knew that she was
yeah.
potentially causing harm to the patients, and they did nothing. Like, I
I
want to see some
personally
statistics. I really want to see some statistics. What was it like when she was not there? Were there no deaths at all? Or was it like
I feel like it was one of those, somebody was in the hospital, they were fine, and then the second they switch shifts and suddenly this patient takes a turn for the worse, and it's just like, what the fuck? They were fine just a bit ago. The only thing that changed is this asshole clocked in.
Yes, I want to know on her day off how many people had emergencies
Well,
in the whole
and
hospital. We won't even narrow it to just the cardiac unit. We'll go with the whole hospital. How many medical emergencies were there when she wasn't there versus when she was?
now on top of that, how many emergencies were not there when her boyfriend wasn't on duty?
Oh, yeah,
Because if
that
she's
too.
doing that for his attention, which apparently it did grab attention if that's who she had an affair with. But anyway, the
Ladies,
district,
there's better ways to meet the men folk. You don't
yeah,
need to cause medical emergencies or chase them with knives or chase them with keys or chase them with any sort of crazy.
or don't hit them at all. Be nice to the
That
men
would fall
folk,
into
and
the crazy.
they will be nice to you. Shut up, Adria.
I
Now,
thought you might not. You're welcome, Dave. I done clarified that for your wife.
the district attorney in her case would call Kristen a shell of a human being who deserved to die for the cold and calculating way she killed her victims.
Preach.
Now, Kristen was convicted in federal court on March 14th, 2001. Now, although Massachusetts does not have a death penalty statute, she was eligible for the death penalty because she committed her crimes on federal property.
Good.
However, the
Fucking
death
bitch.
the death penalty does require a unanimous verdict by the jury, which I'm sorry to tell you did not happen.
Somebody's stupid.
Now, the judge defaulted to 4 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. He also tacked on another 20 years for the attempted murder of the other 2 patients.
Good
Which,
job.
which I don't know why I'm just like, when they get 4 consecutive life sentences and they're like plus 20 years. Okay. All right.
So, while I would agree with you, and I did when I was out for my run this morning and I was thinking about it, I think the reason they do that is because let's just say that they appeal certain things and that one particular case she's able
Falls
to get
off.
knocked. Yeah, it wasn't all riding on that one particular thing. Does that make sense?
Fine. Yes.
You're welcome.
I
For
just picture a judge being like 4 consecutive life sentences
and
plus
20
20.
more.
You know, like, well, I think of it like when you sing somebody happy birthday and many more. Like,
Way to ruin the happy birthday song.
well, Christian would later appeal the verdict,
Uh-huh.
but she withdraws that appeal when she becomes aware that a retrial would throw the death penalty by lethal injection back into the ring. So she's like, never
Know
mind.
your place. Know your place, bitch.
I'll take life in imprisonment. Now, she is currently serving her life sentence at FMC Carswell in Fort Worth, Texas.
Why is she in Texas?
I don't know, because they moved her to Texas.
I guess
Maybe
because
because
she's a lifer.
Massachusetts. Yeah, probably. Maybe because Massachusetts is already a tiny state, so their prison don't need lifers in there. And Texas, everything's bigger in Texas, so they got more room.
You heard it. Them Texans. You heard it. Hey, which by the way, I literally have a notebook in front of me and I done jotted something down that I wanted to make fun of you about. Are you done with this case?
Sure am.
Okay.
Is it because I sang
When
it out of tune?
No, it was when you referred to her as she wanted, when you were talking about how she done wanted her boyfriend to witness all her glory. I always heard that expression meaning like somebody's underpants, not their miraculous life-saving abilities. So when you said that, I was sitting here covering my mouth, acting like a 5-year-old, thinking that about her showing off her panties while doing some sort of life-saving something or other.
I
But
don't, I feel like we misuse a lot of phrases, and why not
we
add another one?
we
That'll be the camel that breaks the straw's back, Andrea.
that is not right. It sure is not.
But nobody will raise an eyeball.
You're just gonna throw all them fun ones in there.
I sure done diddly. I'm gonna cheer for you.
You're welcome for done teaching you another way to talk.
But I was sure glad that when I read that she was appealing her sentence, I was like, if this asshole is out on parole, I'm going to be real upset because the amount of times people have killed multiple people and been on parole, I don't know what the statistics are, but even one is too many. But then I'm going to go right back to my favor of the death penalty. I don't know why we keep on keeping them alive. They're just taking up oxygen.
I'm not going to make it political, but we got two different forms of our democracy. Well, we have more than that, but realistically, we got two, the Democrats, and then they're Republicans, and one of them, they don't want the death penalty, and the other side, they sure done diddly do. And then, because there's all these elections,
they can't vote.
It's for those that do vote, that have them soft hearts, that don't want to see people die, which, by the way, because I got full-blown ADHD today, too much caffeine, I done looked up in all her glory meaning, and it for sure means completely naked. It means
she wasn't naked doing her emergency life-saving activities. It wasn't that kind of hospital.
Well, I just want to, is there that kind of hospital out there?
Know. I was just thinking, if they have a nudist colony, is it just like the neighborhood, or do they have a nudist hospital too?
I don't know, but I would not want to be operated on by a doctor who's got his sweaty balls dangling right there.
He'll have a hairnet.
Those beds are awfully low. On his balls.
This is a warm compress, I'll assure you. This is medically required.
Oh, gosh.
Got off topic there.
That's because you done said they saw her whole all her glory. And I was like,
You know what? Now that you pointed out, I do believe that's the context to which I've heard it before. But for whatever
because that's what it means. That's why you heard it like that. That's what it means.
Well, for whatever reason, that's the phrase that popped into my head at that moment. So it just came out, Andrea. That's why it's unscripted, because the shit just falls into my head and it just comes right out my mouth. Zero filter. You're welcome. But I like how you spent 5-10 minutes scratching your head about it.
I didn't scratch my head. I done jotted it down.
Naked with the
no, I did not.
Paddles.
I jotted down all her glory and put like 10 question marks, followed by me sitting here giggling. And I did not listen to you shortly thereafter because I was sitting here like, do I want to interrupt her for this? She's going to yell at me if I interrupt this part of her story to tell her that she's talking.
Actually, if you were wrong. But then it would have gone down, Andrew, you damn pervert. It's not always about nudists.
But at the same time, if I done looked it up and didn't listen and I was wrong, I wouldn't know what you were talking about. And if I done saw that it said in full splendor and then says completely naked, followed by using in a sentence that says she quickly dressed for the fear that someone would walk in through the shower door and see all her glory. If I read that and you had done moved on and I interrupted you because I was over here just laughing away, you would have gotten so mad at me and you would have yelled at me and my heart would have done broke.
Are you done?
A little bit, yeah.
The whole all her splendor, I'm totally gonna find a way to use that in real life.
It's in full splendor.
Whatever, Andrea. Didn't use the other one right. Why not fuck them all up?
Claire's last goals, people.
To have my own phrases.
Well, this would have been a good Veterans Day case.
It would not have been. She done killed them, Andrea. Were you not listening, or were you giggling in all your glory?
My glory is all put away.
This is Homicide Hobbies coming at you in our birthday suits. Free at last.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mind-fucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.